The cold winter night of December 2nd, 1995, started like any other hockey game at the Montreal Forum. The stands were packed with passionate Canadiens fans, their red jerseys creating a sea of color. But no one knew this night would become one of the most significant moments in hockey history. Patrick Roy skated onto the ice, his trademark confidence visible even through his goalie mask. The Detroit Red Wings, one of the league's strongest teams, waited on the other side. As the puck dropped, everything seemed normal, but then shot after shot found its way past Roy. The score kept climbing: 2 goals, 4 goals, 6 goals, 8 goals, 9 goals. The unthinkable was happening to Montreal's star goalie. The Montreal crowd, usually so loud and supportive, sat in stunned silence. Roy, the hometown hero who had brought them 2 Stanley Cups, was being left in the net as the Red Wings scored again and again. When he was finally pulled from the game, Roy skated to the bench and walked straight past head coach Mario Tremblay. He leaned over to team president Ronald Corey, sitting right behind the bench, and said the words that would change hockey forever. "This is my last game in Montreal." True to his word, for days later, Roy was traded to the Colorado Avalanche. But before we could fully understand what this meant for hockey, Roy gave us another unforgettable moment. Just months later, during the 1996 playoffs against the Chicago Blackhawks, he pulled off what became known as the wink. After making a crucial save against Tomas Sandstrom, Roy turned and winked at him, a clear message that said, "You can't beat me." That single gesture showed everyone that Roy wasn't just a goalie. He was a showman, a competitor, and most importantly, a game changer. This story isn't just about a bad game or a trade. It's about how one of hockey's greatest players used a low point to write a new chapter in his career. Roy didn't just change teams that night in Montreal. He changed how people saw goalies. He proved that a goalie could be more than just someone who stops pucks. They could be the star, the leader, and the difference between winning and losing. That December night in 1995 marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. It was the moment that showed the hockey world that Patrick Roy was different. He wasn't just playing the game, he was changing it. And as we look back now, we can see that this wasn't just a turning point in Roy's career. It was a turning point for hockey itself. In the heart of Quebec City, where hockey isn't just a sport but a way of life, young Patrick Roy was crafting his future one save at a time. Born to parents Michelle and Barbara, Patrick wasn't the natural talent many might expect. Instead, what set him apart was his burning desire to improve and his endless hours of practice in local rinks. The story takes us to the Granby Bisons of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, where a teenage Roy first showed signs of what was to come. While other goalies stuck to the traditional stand-up style, Roy was different. He spent countless hours developing what would later become the butterfly style, dropping to his knees with his leg pads flared out to cover the bottom of the net. His coaches weren't always convinced, but Roy knew he was onto something special. His junior career stats weren't spectacular, and scouts weren't fighting over him. Selected 51st overall in the 1984 NHL entry draft by the Montreal Canadiens, Roy was far from a sure thing. But what the stats and scouts couldn't measure was his mental strength. Every game, every practice, every moment on ice was a chance for Roy to prove himself. He worked harder than anyone else, staying late after practice, studying game tapes, and constantly tweaking his technique. In Granby, Roy's unique style started turning heads. Even when his team struggled, he remained a standout player. He learned to read plays before they developed, positioning himself perfectly to make saves look easy. More importantly, he developed the mental toughness that would define his career. Losses didn't break him. They drove him to be better. The path from Quebec City to the NHL wasn't smooth or certain. Roy faced doubters, critics, and those who said his style would never work at the highest level. But with each save, each game, and each season, he was building more than just a career. He was developing a revolutionary approach to goaltending that would eventually change hockey forever. As Roy's junior career came to an end, few could have predicted the impact he would have on hockey. But the foundation was set: the work ethic, the innovative style, and the unshakable confidence. These weren't just the ingredients of a good goalie. They were the makings of a legend. The Montreal Canadiens took a chance on a young Patrick Roy, and that gamble paid off bigger than anyone could have imagined. In 1986, his rookie season, Roy didn't just play well. He rewrote the story of what rookie goalies could achieve. The 20-year-old backstopped the Canadiens to a Stanley Cup victory, becoming the youngest player to win the Conn Smythe trophy as playoff MVP. The Forum became Roy's kingdom, and the butterfly style became his signature. While traditional goalies stood up to make saves, Roy's revolutionary technique changed the game forever. He would drop to his knees, spread his pads wide, and make himself bigger in the net. At first, hockey purists called it unorthodox. Soon, they called it brilliant. Roy wasn't just stopping pucks. He was changing how the position would be played for generations to come. Then came 1993, the year that cemented Roy's place in hockey history. The Canadiens faced elimination multiple times during those playoffs, but Roy simply refused to lose. He led the team through an unprecedented 10 straight overtime victories, a record that still stands. Every time the pressure mounted, Roy got better. The Stanley Cup victory that year wasn't just a team achievement. It was a masterclass in goaltending. But success brought its own challenges. Roy's fierce competitive nature sometimes clashed with team management. He demanded perfection from himself and expected the same from others. The relationship between the star goalie and the team grew increasingly tense. Behind the scenes, frustrations built up, leading to that fateful night in 1995. For 9.5 seasons, Roy was the heart of the Canadiens. He won 289 games, 2 Stanley Cups, and set countless records. His number 33 became the most sought-after jersey in Montreal. Kids in street hockey games would mimic his butterfly style, dreaming of being the next Patrick Roy. He wasn't just a goalie in Montreal. He was an icon. The Montreal era showed the world what Roy was capable of. It proved that his unconventional style wasn't just effective, it was revolutionary. Every save, every win, and every championship added to a legacy that was already becoming legendary. But even as his star rose in Montreal, no one could have predicted that the best was yet to come. When Patrick Roy arrived in Colorado after the Montreal trade, he didn't just join a new team. He sparked a hockey revolution in the American West. The newly relocated Colorado Avalanche, fresh from Quebec, suddenly had the missing piece they needed. Within months of his arrival, Roy proved this wasn't just a fresh start. It was the beginning of a dynasty. The 1996 season became Roy's statement to the hockey world. He didn't just help the Avalanche win. He transformed them into an unstoppable force. His presence in net gave the team a confidence they'd never had before. The playoffs that year told the story. Roy was virtually unbeatable. When the Avalanche lifted the Stanley Cup, it wasn't just a team victory. It was proof that Roy could change the fortunes of any franchise he joined. In Colorado, Roy found the perfect environment to expand his influence. Young goalies from across North America came to learn from him. He wasn't just playing the game. He was teaching it, shaping it, and elevating it. The Avalanche practice facility became a classroom where Roy's butterfly style was refined and passed on to the next generation. Goalies like David Abisher and Mark Dennis soaked up every detail, every technique, and every bit of wisdom Roy shared. The numbers during his Colorado years were staggering. Roy led the team to another Stanley Cup in 2001, adding to his already impressive collection. He set NHL records for wins, playoff wins, and games played. But more than the statistics, it was his impact on the team's culture that stood out. The Avalanche became known as a team that could win any game simply because they had Roy in net. Roy's relationship with Colorado was different from Montreal. Here, he wasn't just a star player. He was a mentor, a leader, and the foundation of a hockey powerhouse. His competitive fire burned as bright as ever. But now it fueled not just his own success, but the success of everyone around him. The Denver crowd embraced him as their own, and Roy paid them back with save after incredible save. The Colorado years proved that Roy's success in Montreal wasn't a fluke. He showed that true greatness could transcend teams, cities, and even countries. In the thin air of the Rocky Mountains, Patrick Roy didn't just continue his legacy. He enhanced it, setting standards that goalies still strive to match today. The butterfly style existed before Patrick Roy, but he turned it into an art form. While traditional goalies relied on standing up and reacting to shots, Roy's approach was different. He would drop to his knees, spread his leg pads wide like butterfly wings, and cover the bottom of the net while keeping his upper body straight to block high shots. This wasn't just a new technique. It was a complete reimagining of how to play the position. Roy's impact on goalie equipment was just as revolutionary. He worked closely with equipment makers to develop bigger, lighter pads that could slide easily across the ice. The chest protector became larger, gloves got wider, and pants provided more protection. These changes weren't just about safety. They were about giving goalies the tools they needed to play this new style effectively. His preparation methods changed goaltending forever. Roy was one of the first goalies to extensively study video of opposing shooters. He would spend hours analyzing their tendencies, preferred shooting spots, and patterns during power plays. This level of preparation became the new standard. Before Roy, goalies relied mainly on instinct and reflexes. After Roy, they became students of the game. The mental aspect of goaltending was where Roy truly set himself apart. He developed routines that seemed strange at the time, but are now common practice. He would talk to his goalposts, visualize saves before games, and use specific breathing techniques to stay calm under pressure. These mental preparation techniques are now taught to goalies at all levels. Today's NHL goalies all show traces of Roy's influence. The butterfly style has become the foundation of modern goaltending. Watch any game, and you'll see goalies dropping to their knees, sliding from post to post, and using techniques Roy pioneered. Young goalies now grow up learning these methods as basic skills, not knowing they were once considered radical. The changes Roy brought to goaltending went beyond just stopping pucks. He showed that goalies could be leaders, game changers, and the backbone of championship teams. His innovations didn't just help him succeed, they created a blueprint for every goalie who came after him. In hockey history, there are moments before Roy and after Roy. The position would never be the same. When we look at Patrick Roy's career numbers, the story they tell is nothing short of remarkable. 4 Stanley Cup championships split between 2 teams, a feat that shows his ability to excel in different systems and environments. 2 cups with Montreal in 1986 and 1993, followed by 2 more with Colorado in 1996 and 2001. Each championship proved that Roy wasn't just along for the ride. He was the driving force behind these victories. The 3 Conn Smythe trophies stand as proof of his playoff dominance. Winning playoff MVP in 1986, 1993, and 2001 makes him the only 3-time winner in NHL history. More impressive is that he won these awards across 3 different decades, showing his incredible longevity at the highest level. In pressure situations, when everything was on the line, Roy didn't just perform, he excelled. His regular season numbers tell an equally impressive story. Roy finished his career with 551 wins, which was an NHL record at the time of his retirement. He appeared in 1,029 regular season games, made 19,198 saves, and recorded 66 shutouts. These weren't just good numbers. They were record-setting performances that raised the bar for every goalie who followed. In the playoffs, where legends are truly made, Roy's numbers become even more impressive. He played in 247 playoff games, winning 151 of them, both NHL records. His 23 playoff shutouts and 2.30 playoff goals against average show how he elevated his game when it mattered most. The most telling stat might be his 10 straight overtime wins in the 1993 playoffs, a record that still stands and may never be broken. Looking at save percentages and goals against averages across his career, Roy maintained remarkable consistency. Even as the game changed and scoring increased, his numbers remained elite. He finished with a career .910 save percentage and a 2.54 goals against average. Outstanding numbers considering he played through some of the NHL's highest scoring years. The statistics paint a clear picture. Patrick Roy wasn't just one of the best goalies in NHL history. He set the standard by which all others are judged. His numbers don't just tell the story of individual excellence. They tell the story of a player who changed his position and dominated his sport for nearly 2 decades. The true measure of Patrick Roy's greatness goes far beyond statistics. His mental toughness became legendary in the hockey world. Whether facing breakaways in overtime or bouncing back from tough losses, Roy showed an unshakable confidence that lifted his entire team. His famous quote, "I can't hear what Jeremy says because I got my 2 Stanley Cup rings plugging my ears," wasn't just trash talk. It was a display of the supreme confidence that made him unbeatable on his best nights. The competitive fire that burned within Roy changed how teams viewed their goalies. He wasn't just a last line of defense. He was the foundation everything else was built upon. During crucial moments, Roy's presence alone could intimidate opponents. Players admitted to changing their shooting tactics or passing up opportunities simply because Roy was in net. This psychological edge became as valuable as his physical skills. Roy's impact on French-Canadian hockey culture cannot be overstated. In Quebec, he wasn't just a hockey player, he was a cultural icon. Young goalies from Quebec City to Montreal grew up wanting to be Patrick Roy. He showed that a French-Canadian goalie could not only succeed but dominate at the highest level. This influence created a goaltending pipeline from Quebec that continues to produce NHL talent today. His rivalries, especially with the Detroit Red Wings, brought out his best performances. The battles against Detroit in the late 1990s and early 2000s weren't just games. They were wars on ice. Roy thrived in these moments, making impossible saves and proving that when the stakes were highest, he was at his best. These rivalry games showcased every aspect of what made Roy special: the skill, the competitive fire, and the ability to rise to any occasion. What made Roy truly unique was his ability to combine technical excellence with raw emotion. He played with both his head and his heart, making calculated decisions while maintaining an intense emotional investment in every game. This combination created a style of play that was both technically sound and incredibly entertaining to watch. His leadership style, though unconventional, proved incredibly effective. Roy led by example, showing rather than telling. His work ethic in practice, his preparation before games, and his resilience after losses set standards that his teammates couldn't help but follow. He showed that a goalie could be more than just a player. They could be the heart and soul of a championship team. Walk into any NHL arena today, and you'll see Patrick Roy's influence everywhere you look. From the local rink to the professional level, young goalies drop into the butterfly position as naturally as breathing. They don't just copy Roy's style, they build upon the foundation he created. Modern stars like Carey Price, Marc-Andre Fleury, and others openly credit Roy for shaping their approach to the position. The evolution of goaltending since Roy's retirement shows just how far ahead of his time he was. What was once considered revolutionary is now fundamental. Goalie coaches at all levels teach the butterfly style as the base technique. The mental preparation methods Roy developed, from visualization to pre-game routines, have become standard practice. His influence extends beyond technique to the very role of a goalie within a team. Roy's transition to coaching revealed another layer of his impact on hockey. As head coach of the Quebec Remparts and later the Colorado Avalanche, he passed on his knowledge directly to the next generation. While his coaching career had ups and downs, his ability to develop young talent, especially goalies, proved that his understanding of the game went far beyond just stopping pucks. The debate about the greatest goalie of all time always includes Roy's name at the top. Hockey experts point to his combination of statistical excellence, innovation, and ability to perform in crucial moments. Former players speak of his intimidating presence, while coaches remember his work ethic and attention to detail. What sets Roy apart in the GOAT conversation isn't just what he accomplished, but how he changed the game itself. Today's NHL goalies face different challenges than Roy did, yet his principles remain relevant. The position continues to evolve, but the foundation Roy built stays solid. Modern goaltending equipment, playing styles, and training methods all carry his fingerprints. His legacy lives on in every butterfly save, in every goalie who talks to their posts, and in every netminder who rises to the occasion in a big game. The true measure of Roy's impact isn't just in the records he set or the championships he won. It's in the lasting change he brought to hockey. He didn't just play the game at the highest level. He revolutionized his position and inspired generations of goalies to come. In the end, that might be Patrick Roy's greatest achievement, not just being the best, but making everyone who came after him better. The numbers tell an undeniable story. For Stanley Cups, 3 Conn Smythe trophies, and 551 wins. Yet Patrick Roy's true legacy extends far beyond these impressive statistics. When we measure greatness in sports, we often look at 3 key factors: dominance during their era, lasting impact on the game, and the ability to revolutionize their position. Roy didn't just check these boxes, he redefined them. Comparing Roy to other goaltending greats reveals what makes him unique. While others excelled within the existing framework of the position, Roy created an entirely new framework. Martin Brodeur may have more wins, Jacques Plante may have revolutionized the mask, but no other goalie changed every aspect of the position, from technique to equipment to mental preparation. His impact on hockey transcends individual achievements. Roy showed that a goalie could be more than just a last line of defense. They could be the cornerstone of a championship team. He proved that innovation, even when initially criticized, could transform the sport. The butterfly style, once considered radical, is now the standard. His mental toughness and preparation methods are now part of every goalie's training. What defines a GOAT, greatest of all time, isn't just excellence, but influence. By this measure, Roy stands alone. Every modern NHL goalie carries a piece of his legacy, whether they realize it or not. From the way they play to how they prepare, from their equipment to their mindset, Roy's influence is permanent and far-reaching. In the end, Patrick Roy's unmatched legacy isn't just about being the best goalie of his era. It's about being the most influential goalie in hockey history. He didn't just play the position, he transformed it. He didn't just win games, he changed how the game is played. In the long history of hockey, there was goaltending before Patrick Roy and goaltending after Patrick Roy. No other player can claim such a profound and lasting impact on their position.